Ezio Auditore isn't remembered because he was the best assassin, he was remembered because we watched him change, and most games never let that happen. In this video, we're looking at Ezio's life across the trilogy, not as a legend, but as a person shaped by time. We'll move through the key stages of his life from who he was before the Creed to who he becomes once he finally understands it. By the end of the video, you'll understand why Ezio's story feels so complete and why his ending matters more than any of his victories.
Ezio Auditore da Firenze.
When Assassin's Creed 2 opens, Ezio is not introduced as a hero or a chosen one. He isn't framed as someone destined for greatness. He's reckless, impulsive, and comfortable. The son of a respected Italian family, more concerned with flirting and street fights than academics or purpose. The game makes a point to highlight this. Ezio cruises across rooftops for fun. He fights with rivals over pride rather than principle. He flirts openly, laughs easily, and lives entirely in the moment. There is no urgency in him yet. There's no sense of destiny or higher calling, and importantly, no idea of the creed that would change his life. This version of Ezio exists in a stark contrast to many protagonists in the series. Altair from the original Assassin's Creed game begins his story already defined by a belief. Even when he's arrogant or flawed, he is still shaped by an ideology, already stuck in his ways. Ezio isn't. He doesn't care about Templars. The conflict that plagues the entire series is completely invisible to him. Now, when tragedy strikes, it doesn't arrive as a revelation or prophecy, it arrives through political manipulation. Ezio doesn't understand. His life has been stripped away before he even has time to process. From that pivotal moment, Ezio isn't driven by belief, he's driven by confusion, anger without direction, loss without context, and grief without explanation. And he doesn't get a moment to reflect on these emotions, he's forced to survive them. Ezio doesn't stop to ask what loss means, he asks what it requires him to do next. Be it run, hide, fight, or endure, Ezio learns skills before he understands why he needs them. He learns to fight, climb, and incapacitate enemies not because he believes in a cause, but because there are tools that are required for him to stay alive. Ezio's early missions are not philosophical acts, they're personal. Each objective is tied directly to his loss, his anger, or his confusion. The creed at this stage is just something he borrows rather than believes it. Mentors provide techniques, allies offer context. Ezio imitates before he understands. The game allows him to grow competent long before he has time to reflect. And that competence creates momentum. Each success pushes him forward, but it doesn't bring him clarity. As Ezio becomes more capable, the world begins to rely on him. He is useful, he is effective, and he is trusted, but usefulness is not the same as understanding. Ezio doesn't yet know what kind of man he's becoming. He only knows how to keep moving, and his calling never forces him to stop.
It's me, Mario!
By the time Ezio begins moving openly as an assassin, he has already developed his confidence. He understands how to fight, how to climb, and how to disappear into crowds. From the outside, Ezio already looks like an assassin. He knows how to complete objectives efficiently, and that's exactly the problem. Because while Ezio learns the way of the creed quickly, he does not yet understand its full meaning. He's driven less by understanding and more by momentum and unresolved revenge. In his story, knowledge and belief are separated deliberately. Ezio is taught how to act long before he's taught why. Mentors explain techniques, codex pages explain history, allies provide fragments of context, but understanding lags behind. Ezio completes missions with increasing confidence, but his motivation remains largely unchanged. He isn't guided by philosophy, he's guided by his targets. Each completed objective reinforces the idea that moving forward is the correct response. Reflection becomes optional, success becomes justification. The creed functions as a structure rather than a belief system. Rules to follow, instructions to obey. Ezio follows them because they work, not because he has yet internalized what they demand. The game rarely encourages players to slow down. Objectives chain into one another, travel is fluid, and success is immediate. The codex pages might exist, but they're optional. Historical explanations are available, but never required. Ezio moves forward and the game moves with him. This creates a subtle parallel between the character and the player. We push ahead because Ezio does. But progress alone doesn't produce clarity. By the end of the game, Ezio looks complete, but internally something is missing, and that gap is where the next phase begins. And if this kind of long-form reflective breakdown is your thing, consider subscribing. There are more stories like this coming.
What do you know of Ezio?
By the time we step into Brotherhood, Ezio is no longer learning how to act. Others are watching him now. He arrives in Rome already established, respected, trusted, and recognized as someone capable of taking charge. The game doesn't treat him as a student anymore, it respects him as a solution. Ezio rebuilds the Brotherhood quickly. He recruits, he coordinates, he commands. Leadership gives him authority, but it also gives him distance. He sends others to complete objectives. He oversees rather than participates. He leads rather than responds. And so Rome begins to stabilize. District by district, influence is reclaimed, control is reasserted, Ezio thrives outwardly, but leadership never gives him a rest. Delegation creates isolation. Responsibility spreads, but reflection disappears. The Brotherhood trusts Ezio completely. Success reinforces his approach, confidence hardens into certainty. Ezio is powerful, capable, and unquestioned. That makes him vulnerable. Brotherhood is not about wisdom, it's about establishment, and establishment brings blind spots. Blind spots that don't announce themselves, they only appear when control stops working.
Ezio, what are you doing here?
Moving into Revelations, Ezio is no longer propelled by urgency, he's propelled by his heart and memory. His movements are slower, his voice is quieter, and his certainty is thinner. He has seen cities rise and fall, and he has lived through patterns that continue to repeat themselves. Conflicts change names, not nature. He travels to Masyaf not because he is needed, but because he feels unfinished. Altair's memories unfold alongside his own, not as instructions, but as a reflection. His ghost becomes a mirror that Ezio can't ignore. A man who devoted everything to the creed and paid for it. Ezio finally sees the cost of endless devotion. The creed becomes philosophy rather than instruction. Ezio questions whether actions still matter, and whether cycles will ever truly end. Revelations allow doubt to exist. Ezio listens, he waits, he reflects, and for the first time he slows down. Not because he must, but because he chooses to. He understands that the creed was never about dominance, it was about awareness, and awareness arrives late, but at least it arrives at all.
The Auditore are not dead! I'm still here!
Ezio understands something that most modern day characters never deal with. Staying in place can be a sign of avoidance. He could have stayed where he was, the creed would have allowed it, but continuing would only preserve the version of himself that's shaped by necessity. Ezio leaves not in failure, but in understanding. He does not reject the creed, he releases himself from it. His final act is not dramatic, it is deliberate. Ezio is remembered not for staying, but for knowing when to stop. Most of us met Ezio when we were younger. He felt inspirational, confident, and easy to follow. But years later, returning to the story feels different, not because the games have changed, but because we have. Across 3 games, we watch Ezio take on roles he didn't ask for, responsibilities that quietly grew, expectations that never stopped. At first, that feels empowering. Then it feels heavy. Ezio's ending resonates because it is honest, and he finally leaves when the role no longer fits the person that he's become. And hey, if you enjoy deep dives like this, stories about games, time, and personal growth, make sure to subscribe. We got plenty more on the way.